morning, everyone. My name is Alan Chatt. I work for IBM as a product manager for Event Automation. And for the next 20 minutes, I was going to talk to you about, well, as the title says, putting events to work in your organization. And it's not just about kind of one project, but it's actually about like the journey that we see everyone going on to become a more event-driven company. I kind of want to share what we've learned about that, and hopefully some of those experiences will be useful to everyone here as part of going on their own journey. But also, I then want to kind of explain how everything that we've kind of accumulated there has kind of manifested itself in our event automation capability, to give you an understanding of that. So, given the conference, I'm hoping that the audience will kind of recognize this. But essentially, we believe that event-driven approaches are going to fuel competitive enterprises. Like if I think about the experiences that I've had that have been like the best experiences engaging with companies, it's normally because they've been kind of interactive, they've been really up to date, and just the technologist in me knows that behind the scenes, it's powered by events and kind of an understanding of what's happening in the moment. And so event-driven approaches are about kind of providing continuous awareness of what's going on. It shocks me the number of companies, and I hold up our hands to this as well, that don't actually know what's kind of going on. So events helps with that. It drives automation. Again, thinking about efficiencies and how we want to kind of engage with people. Events are driving a more timely interaction with companies. And ultimately, it's about enabling adaptability. This is the ultimate end goal for many of the companies that we're talking to, is about wanting to understand when things are changing and then change their approach, reaction to the situations as they evolve. So everyone is kind of on this journey, but we have to start somewhere. I've accumulated just a small sample of kind of projects that we see people engaging on. And the kind of details of these projects are not necessarily that important. But our takeaway from all of these conversations that we're having and all of the journeys that people are on is that, number one, there isn't a particular industry or even kind of aspect to your business that people are focusing on when they come to think about event-driven approaches. It's genuinely ubiquitous, which tells us that event-driven as an approach has the potential to transform essentially the entire way that you do business. But I keep coming back to, it is a journey that we're going on, and we're taking these projects kind of one at a time, depending on where we're going to get the most impact for ourselves. So imagine a future where actually we're getting towards the end of this journey and everything that we do is event-driven. Everything has the most up-to-date information about what's happening and can react accordingly. We know when to drive automations. We know when to drive interaction patterns. I think everyone recognizes that as a worthy end goal, something that we're heading towards. But then we stop and ask ourselves, well, what's slowing us down? What are the headwinds? What are the challenges that we're facing? And I think you'll recognize some of these because I've heard them in a few of the talks as people are starting to describe the challenges that they're facing at different points in the journey. But we certainly have picked up on these as being key challenges that every company is facing in this space. So number one is about discovering the events, the raw materials of you're actually going to use in your event-driven solutions. How do you find them, discover them, know that they're there in order to make use of them? So that's a huge challenge and probably the biggest hidden cost in most event-driven projects. Second one is about the tools in your toolbox. And again, I love conferences like this because you get to see all of the different kind of tools that are available and are being built. But when it comes to event data, there is definitely a set of tools that we need to add to our toolbox. And it kind of ties into this final point, which is I definitely see the innovation that's happening in this space. Even if I compare us to 12 months, 24 months ago, I'm seeing so many more kind of tools at our disposal, but there is a real focus on tools for frameworks for engineers. And actually, as we kind of wind forward in our journeys, we need to start thinking about how do we get beyond development-led projects. Like if we want to become truly event-driven in everything that we do, then we need to start thinking about how is everyone in our organization going to need to interact with these events, work with them, build them into their workflows. And so, yes, tools are great, but the on-ramp to them and the broadening of the audience is going to be really critical in the journey. Not only that, but you have added constraints. So I've listed a couple here that are really important to people. So the first one is like very few people have got a green field where they can start afresh and do everything that they want in the way that they want. We have existing projects that we need to work with. We have existing technology choices that we kind of need to sit with. And like, we're never going to rip those up and throw them away. So we need to like fit into an existing environment. So we're very conscious of that. And secondly, we're very conscious of the fact that we need to maintain the independence, the autonomy of our project teams. This is how we scale development across companies nowadays. We've got lots of independent projects that all can are self-determining to a greater extent. And because there's so many different bits of technology out there that can work with events, we need to help those teams, empower them to pick the right approach for them. Because as we look about where companies are heading, events has an impact across a huge number of domains. It's not, yes, absolutely data and application design, but the more we go look into it, things like process monitoring, process mining, all becoming more real-time, wanting access to events, integrations, real-time analytics, automations. There's a huge number of different domains that are actually going to need to kind of interact with events. And so this is the world that we're kind of trying to design to fit into. So let me talk about what is event automation, so you can understand how some of these observations, some of these learnings are manifesting in here. For us, event automation brings together capabilities that is about helping people accelerate their journey to become more event-driven by taking on the challenges that I kind of outlined, but with a goal of fitting into your existing estate, complementing what you have, not trying to replace. And I think the most important aspect of this slide actually is in that kind of top right-hand corner. It's about composability. It's not about a kind of monolithic stack of technologies that you're going to use for event-driven stuff, and it sits over here in kind of new shiny isolation. It's about something that can fit into your infrastructure, fit in with the technology choices you've already made for existing projects, but kind of help you move forward with some of the challenges that we've outlined. So for us, what this means is kind of three distinct capabilities that are kind of composable, work really well together, but also work really well with that broader ecosystem. As you can see, we've got event streams, which is about distributing events around your environment. I'll say a little bit more about each of these as we go on. We've got event endpoint management. You can think of this as solving the discovery, management, governance aspect that is definitely emerging in most people's life cycle as they use events now. And then we've got event processing, where our goal is to take on that challenge of opening up events and event-driven approaches, like adding event stream processing to the toolbox of a broader audience. Think of this as your knowledge workers, your business analysts, people that might be used to just informally analyzing data in something like Excel as part of their job. Well, actually, the more that we see automation reaching out to these automation technologies reaching out to these people, the more that we see the need for them to be able to actually work with the events in the first place to determine when they're triggering. So just to expand on all of these a little bit further, and also kind of each time explain how composability has played a part in what we're doing and why we think it's important. I'll start with just saying a little bit about event streams. This is, you can think of this as IBM's supported distribution of Apache Kafka. It's there, it's part of the capability. You can absolutely use it. It's designed to be efficiently deployed, run, operated on Kubernetes. At the same time, coming back to that composability thought, if you've already got other flavors of Kafka in your organization, probably, as we often find, a mix of different kind of flavors of Kafka, some open source, some managed service in your favorite cloud provider, Confluent Cloud, like whatever, usually kind of quite a mix. That's totally fine too. Nothing that we've got in here requires you to be using event streams. And this kind of brings me on to like an interesting thought. Like, we think Kafka is a really interesting and elegant technology as it comes to event streaming. But I think the real impact, like the real thing that has changed about the industry with the ubiquity and use of Kafka that we see, is actually the protocol. Like, the Kafka protocol, even though it's not standardized, has given us a common way that allows you over the network to interact with streams of events. And I think it's the ubiquity of the protocol that's actually proving most interesting and like the common factor in this layer. Which kind of moves on to like thinking about that discovery and management piece. Like, we deliberately separated this out as a composable capability because you don't just want to catalog the events that exist in kind of one cluster or one flavor. You want to catalog your events that actually exist across your entire organization. And if some of those events exist in Red Panda, some of them exist in your cloud services, some of them exist on-premise in event streams, then actually you need something that can span all of those environments. So we deliberately took the discovery, management, and governance piece and made it a distinct component. And that can compose with all of these different underlying technologies. We've also kind of thought about this, and we often describe this as API management for events because we've been heavily influenced by API management in the way that we've gone about building this and the way that it works. And you can kind of see why, because your APIs can be built in lots of different technologies. They exist in lots of different places around your organization. So, because the same is true of events, it just makes sense to take the same approach. So, on lifting the lid ever so slightly on that, kind of how does that work? Well, it's the same principles as API management. You have a catalog, which is where all of your descriptions of your events that are being shared amongst your organization exist. And you've got like a manager component, which is where you go to define those event endpoints. It's where you go to set any policies, access controls that you want to place on those. And then what you need in addition to that is an enforcement point. And so because we want this to be composable with all of the different kind of flavors of Kafka, types of Kafka, we've implemented the enforcement point as we call it here, the event gateway. But this is, the way that we've built this is it understands the Kafka protocol, the thing that we've just talked about, binding the ecosystem together. It understands the Kafka protocol, it proxies it, and it uses its knowledge of the Kafka protocol to enforce any policies that you've set there. So I think that's a really interesting approach because your consumer technology framework can be written as anything that talks to the Kafka protocol as a client. And your event brokers, and I've deliberately kind of labeled them generically in this diagram, can be any mix of anything that implements the Kafka protocol itself as a server, which I think is, for a lot of people that we're working with, allows them to layer on this discovery management and governance piece on top of investments that they've already made, often with different flavors of Kafka or even different technologies there. So I think that's really interesting. The final thing about the discovery and management bit actually is the fact that because it's so similar to APIs, we've designed it to be similar to APIs. You can export your definitions as async API documents and actually manage and work with APIs and events in the same portal if you're using API Connect. So that for us, thinking about events as just another form of interface, I think is an interesting thought, especially as we start to grapple with the idea of data products. A common pattern that we're seeing around data products is to provide different interfaces into the same data product. Some of them APIs, some of them graph, some of them streams of events. And I think that's really, again, because that's going to be such a common pattern, managing these alongside each other in the same portal, very interesting and powerful. So the last of these that I'll talk about is the event processing piece. How was everything that we've learned kind of manifested here? So our job here is to expand the audience into, I describe business analysts, knowledge workers, automation specialists. So we want to take like all of the operations that you might want to do on streams of events and kind of expose it in a way that is kind of building on the skill set that knowledge workers has. And our kind of baseline for this is like people that are using Excel. Like pretty much anyone can use Excel. So how can we help make event processing accessible to this audience? So from a composability point of view, can take any source of events like on the way in, and actually because we're writing them out to Kafka, you can use the results of your event processing in a huge number of different ways. In terms of what event processing is, it's a visual authoring experience, very similar to some of the like low codes, like iPaaS type of experiences, but what actually gets generated and deployed out of this are jobs that run on Apache Flink. So the runtime itself, supported as part of this, is like what you're kind of probably used to, probably either using or thinking about using. So again, you can kind of manage it in and deploy it and like reason about it in a sensible way. I will say that even though our design point here has been for like knowledge workers, we've had some really strong and positive feedback from a developer audience as well, because as has been said numerous times in lots of different talks, like there is a huge skill gap with people like getting their head around what stream processing is and how to employ it. And a tool like this provides a really convenient and nice on-ramp onto these technologies, but ultimately you're kind of deploying onto Flink itself. So it's a really nice kind of on-ramp is what we've seen. Just to highlight some of the things that we focused on, obviously you've got all of the autocomplete and expression builders and that you'd expect from a visual tooling, but our user research has told us that it's the element of time that relates to events that is the most kind of new experience for people to get their head around. And so a lot of the design of this capability has been focused on that element, like helping people understand and reason about windows of time, bucketing data together, and the implications of doing that. The other thing that we've noticed is that people learn best when they're exploring. So being able to rapidly iterate on something, try it out, deploy it, see the results in context, like tweak something and then see the results of that change. That rapid iteration cycle is super important in terms of like learning and like ability to be productive. So again, the ability to both deploy from the UI onto a Flink cluster exists and is widely used, but also then be able to export that as an asset that you could check into Git version control and deploy in a pipeline is hugely valuable. That gives us a kind of broad range of potential users here. So kind of coming towards the end of the 20 minutes, I just wanted to wrap up by kind of reiterating some of the key points here, which is this is a journey for everyone. I suspect everyone in this room and everyone watching the recording. And like that journey has to fit with your existing infrastructure. Like there's no kind of rip and replace, and it's very unlikely to be successful if it's an entirely siloed kind of effort that sits alongside what you've already done. And so think about that as you're on your journey. Within Event Automation, we've been through kind of how that composability manifests itself in these three capabilities. And if you'd like to find out more, see what we do, please come visit us at the booth 217. You'll find some of our experts on hand to give you like a demo of this. You can explore it for yourself, talk to you a little bit more about like how it fits, how it might fit into your infrastructure. Or you can follow this QR code and sign up for a demo. But with that, Thank you very much.